Our crisis is a birth. Crisis is an evolutionary driver. Now, that's actually the structure of reality. Single cells are being poisoned by oxygen, and so reality seeks higher levels of intimacy. Right? A crisis in intimacy, the single cells, they're dying, so they seek a new structure, a new configuration of intimacy, and what emerges is multicellular life, which is actually the movement towards plants and animals and mammals. That's a structure of reality that all the great traditions intuited. Evolutionary science knows it as a scientific fact. The great traditions knew it as a fact of interior sciences. And you don't have to look any farther than the Bible. I mean, what does the Bible begin with? A mess, a crisis. Adam and Eve, those mythic figures, are hanging out in the garden, and it does not go well. So the entire great Western story of humanity, right, begins with a crisis. Our crisis is a birth. The Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, it's a crisis, it's a battle. Right? Arjuna is talking to Krishna. Right? Crisis always initiates the next level. Actually, very, very beautifully, in the original Hebrew, the word for crisis, shever, means the breaking. But it also means the new nourishment, that which sustains me at a new level. So the shvira, shever, is on the one hand the breakdown, and it's also the breakthrough. And the breakdown and the breakthrough are always intimately related. The story always begins with a failure. So what we've done in the Western world is we have accomplished so much. The scientific revolution has done so much, and its unintentional byproducts are disastrous. There's the dignities of modernity and the disasters of modernity. We've grown so exponentially, we've been unaware that we're living in this context, in this environment. Technology has become its own driving force, but it's become dissociated from interiors, from values, from meaning, from direction, from a larger purpose, from nobility, from gorgeousness, from the good, the true, and the beautiful. But our crisis is a birth, right? It invites the next possibility. So as we're at this moment of a global action confusion and a global action paralysis, and we realize it's rooted in a global intimacy disorder, we realize, oh, a new configuration of intimacy. It's kind of like that classical image of the caterpillar that's trying to become the butterfly. And actually, structurally, there's no structural similarity at core between the structure of a caterpillar and the structure of a butterfly. They have different core structures, and yet the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. How does it happen? Well, the caterpillar is basically done. It doesn't know what to do anymore, right? So it just hangs itself up in a chrysalis. And it's so done, it's so exhausted, as it were, that it really just becomes internally a soup. And something wants to emerge from that soup. It doesn't want to die there as a chrysalis. It's seeking to become something new. It's exhausted itself. It's bloated beyond imagination. And then something begins to move. Something begins to emerge. Emergency generates new emergence. And the biologists, almost mystically, named these new cells that emerge imaginal discs. Imagine that, John Lennon, thank you, right? And those imaginal discs become imaginal cells. And of course, the old structure of the caterpillar, its immune system, goes to kill those imaginal cells. So people try and emerge with a new vision, and reality goes to kill them, directly or indirectly. And if someone's really speaking into the future, someone's really holding a memory of the future, right, they stand a good chance, as Wilhelm Reich reminded us, and as Wilhelm Reich experienced when he died in 1957, or in prison, right, viciously attacked, right, by the structures of government, because he was ahead of his time. And he dies by himself in a cell in the winter someplace in Kentucky. I mean, really? That's Reich. But Reich understood that. He lived it in his body, and he called it the murder of Christ. By Christ we mean, right, eros, we mean aliveness, we mean new possibility. And reality has a structure, an antibody, right, that goes to destroy new possibility. And so what the imaginal cells need to do, and just let me just go back for a second. It's not a kind of strange, weird, magical structure. The reason people go to destroy new possibility is because new possibility, right, exposes them to the fact that they've given up on themselves. Reich wrote a book called Listen, Little Man. And what he meant was, when you actually try and stand for aliveness, and you're trying to love people open madly with all your heart and soul, so there's also something in people that feels like somehow your aliveness exposes the fact that they've stopped trying, that they're actually living in repetition, that they're failing to live their beauty and their goodness and their truth. So instead of actually reaching for their own greatness, right, they actually find their greatness, or their energy more particularly, by destroying someone else or another set of ideas. And so it's dangerous, right? It's not simple, right? And I remember Chung Sa way back when said, I come to speak dangerous words. I ask only that you listen dangerously, and we can add to that, and it's really dangerous to do. So what do we do? How do we make it to the other side? So what happens in the chrysalis of the caterpillar is that the imaginal cells make contact with each other. Right? They stop being individuals, and they begin to form a larger community. They find each other. They look in each other's eyes. Right? They begin to form, right, a larger field of intimacy. And then that larger field of intimacy becomes a new configuration until finally it's released as Homo, Amor, right? A butterfly, right? With gorgeousness, with wings that lights up reality. And so we're here, right? We're here in reality at this moment in time to move from a bloated caterpillar hung up as a chrysalis and to transform into a butterfly. And we need to be imaginal cells, because the core crisis in reality now is not actually a crisis of resources. Of course there's a crisis of resources. Of course there's infrastructure breakdown, an educational breakdown, an extraction model breakdown. And of course, as my friend Daniel, right, Daniel Schmachtenberger always points out, right, we're in a self-terminating system. But the core crisis is underneath it. It's a crisis of imagination. Right? And we need to reclaim imagination, which means to imagine new possibilities. Right? God, the God you don't believe in doesn't exist. Right? God is the possibility of possibility. Right? That is the alive, inherent, intelligent essence, madly loving of reality, always seeking new intimacies. And so let's just feel into that together. Right? We can actually birth Homo Amor. Like, wow. Now, to do that, to birth Homo Amor, we can't skip steps, right? We have to do the work. And to do the work, to kind of free ourselves from our addictions, right? To free ourselves from pseudo-eros, to claim the erotic life. But by the erotic life, we don't mean simply the sexual life. You can claim the erotic life and be celibate. And the erotic life is to live with full, radical aliveness. Eros means the experience of radical aliveness, desiring, fully seeking full contact, ever deeper contact, and ever larger wholes, right? To live the erotic life, we got to get over our addiction to pseudo-eros that covers over the emptiness. But you can't get over your addiction just by reordering yesterday. And in the addiction field today, it's all about recovering memory in order to somehow rework your trauma, and that's beautiful and necessary. And we need to recover the memory of the pages of our life that we've ripped out. But you cannot move beyond addiction simply by reordering or reconfiguring or even healing your past. Right? The memory of the past is insufficient to move beyond addiction. We need the strange attractor. We need to recover a memory of the future. It was Gabriel Marcel, I think, who said, hope is a memory of the future. Homo Amor is a voice from the future. Homo Amor is our future self. Right? Homo Amor is the emergent from the emergency. Now, Homo, Amor can't bypass doing their personal work. Homo, Amor is what my friend Barbara Marx Hubbard, right, likes to call the future self. Right? It's a voice from the future. Right? It calls us from the future. Homo, Amor is the arousal of the future, right, calling me. In order to be Homo, Amor, right, to recover the memory of the future, I can't bypass either the past or the present. So there's work I have to do, but the work is joyous, it's delightful, it's ecstatic because it's not me lost in doing my psychological rehashing again and again and again and again. And let me now hire another therapist, and now let me hire another one because at least someone's going to listen to my story. And let me work it through again and again. And I am a victim, and I get all my energy from being a victim. No, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is actually reconfiguring my own interior structure as part of the evolution of intimacy. I'm part of an intimate field. So the work I do in reconfiguring my intimacy, right, is part of the work of the healing and transformation of the entire story. So here's one of the tenets of intimacy. Intimacy means no parts are left out. Enlightenment is intimacy with all my parts. But even more than that, enlightenment is the ability to go inside, gather in all my parts, and then reconfigure them into a larger whole greater than the sum of any of the parts, which is a new configuration of intimacy. So what we have to do is we have to do the work. And part of the work is going back, right, to that early period in childhood when my heart got ripped out. Now, knowing that that happened to so many of us is not that we were victims. It's not that reality's terrible. And it's not that somebody did something to me, even if they did. It's that the structure of reality is such that our crisis is a birth. We all break down. It's part of the structure of reality. It's not somebody did it, oh, it's so tragic. Now let's move into the post-tragic mode, right? Meaning that's how it works, right? That's the structure of reality. And actually in what Leibniz called the philosophia perennius, the perennial philosophy, what you actually realize is that I'm both part of the larger whole, then I fall away from the larger whole, right? I alienate, right? I break down, I'm hurt, I'm pained, I'm traumatized, and we all are one way or the other. And then finding my way home, I actually become more than I was before I fell away. So it's not like, oh, there I was in bliss, there I was in Eden, oh, isn't it horrible? She did it, he did it, my mother, my teacher, the society, the person who victimized me. No, we're all in Eden, and we all fall away from Eden. But that's not a tragedy. It's the nature of reality. We've got to move, right, as my friend Ken Wilber says, up from Eden. Up from Eden, right? And that happens when I reconfigure my past and recover a memory of the future. So one key step is to realize, and this was a great insight of really one of the great men of the 20th century, and he's alive today, I believe, living in Maui, the 21st century, Oscar Ichazo. And Oscar Ichazo, and thank you, Oscar, right, spoke about the fixation of your attention, right? You go through that period of psychological birth, your 18 months, your 20 months, your 3 years, and mother, father, caretaker can't quite pay attention. And you cry and you don't get response. And the synchrony you have with reality, and reality responding to you doesn't quite happen, and you feel insulted, and you feel hurt, and you can't figure out why it's happening. But again, it's not a tragedy, it's not a horror, it's the way we're born. So what we do when that happens is we fixate our attention, and we try and give ourselves an explanation for our feeling of alienation, our feeling of separateness. Gurdjieff called this, Gurdjieff, one of the great philosophers of the last 150 years, right? He called it, right, the shock of separation. And I'm shocked by separation. I'm shocked by reality not responding to me. Not because I'm a narcissist, but because I'm resonant with reality and I don't understand why I'm alienated. And so what I do is I develop a kind of sentence, a kind of false framework sentence. Stephen Walensky called it once a false core. And it might be, I'm not enough. It might be, I'm broken. It might be, I'm alone. It might be, I'm not safe. It might be, I'm not good enough. It might be, I'm not trustworthy. It might be, I'm incompetent. And there's actually some 25 core sentences, right? And each person resonates with some combination of them. And what happens is, when we go through the shock of separation, our attention fixates into the sentence that explains to us why we're in pain. I'm too much. We're unaware of the sentence. It happens invisibly. But what then emerges is that everything I do, I generate from within that sentence. So my sentence, just as an example, because this notion that we've got this enlightened teacher who's got no work to do, we all have work to do. No one stops their work. So just to share personally, right, my sentence is I'm not safe. Right, for lots of reasons, and I don't want to bother everyone on camera with the whole story, but if you want to give me a buzz, we can do a little therapy session, we can talk about it, but I'm not safe. And about 25 years ago, I began to realize, oh, I'm generating reality from within that sentence. Now, that doesn't mean the sentence is wrong. The sentence might actually be true. But even if it's true, you don't have to generate reality from within it. Right? So if I begin to generate reality from within, I'm not safe, right, then things get really complicated in all sorts of hard ways. And so I have to actually realize, I can actually, I'm not safe. Well, let me go into that. I'm not safe. So let me see, can I reconfigure that sentence? So I felt like I wasn't safe. So maybe I didn't discern which risks I should take. Or maybe I felt I'm not safe, since I'm not safe anyways, so I'll just take every risk. Or maybe because I feel I'm not safe, maybe I'll confuse intimacy and safety. But there's lots of ways we can work that, right, in a way which actually doesn't serve our devotion to ourselves, right, to our friends, to our family, to the larger reality. We generate our reality from within our false core sentence. And then what we do is we then develop a false self to cover up the false core. Now, the false self is not wrong. The false self might do gorgeous stuff. The false self might be beautiful. I might have a sentence which is I'm not lovable, right? So in order to cover up I'm not lovable, I may do gorgeous things in the world. I might start a corporation or invent something beautiful or become a teacher or become an author or a therapist or this awesome gardener. I might do gorgeous things to cover up I'm not lovable, but what's happening is that those beautiful things I'm doing are part of my false self that's unconsciously covering up my false core. Now, I don't want to stop doing those beautiful things, but I want to realize, the part of me that's motivated to cover up the false core, I can let that go. I can actually realize I am beautiful. I am gorgeous, not because I'm a narcissist. Narcissist means I don't love myself. I am gorgeous and beautiful. I am a unique configuration of intimacy. And I can begin to do the same great stuff I was doing as part of my false self, as part of my unique self, my unique expression of the field of intimacy, as part of my gorgeous contribution to that field of intimacy, right? As part of my commitment, right, to actually directly impact reality through my circle of intimacy and influence. And all of a sudden, that stuff I was doing, which came from this non-intimate place with myself, so to some real extent it rang hollow with even a part of me that was empty and part of the people around me. I can now do the same thing, but this time, right, I'm intimate, full contact with the full ground of who I am. So I'm doing the same stuff, but this time I'm alive, and it comes through, and it happens in an entirely different way, and reality just opens up to meet me.